Hey everybody, welcome back to RPO Restorations. I've had a request for this one in the comments section, so today I'm going to finally do it. We're going to be doing a full-on tuning of all the electronic components in a Rochester Quadrajet or Dualjet carburetor. So if you own one of these and want to learn how to set it right, and get your car running right, then stay tuned. We're going to cover a lot. This is going to be a two-part video, so let's get started. Okay, so first, we're going to set the mixture control solenoid on the carburetor, and that requires taking off the air horn and opening it up. Don't worry, I'm going to include links up top for all the tools that I use. So let's first take the air cleaner off and get a look at what we're working with. Now that we've got the air cleaner off, this is what we're working with. First step to removing the air horn, we're going to have to disconnect all the hoses, the mixture control solenoid, remove the choke assembly, and then start taking out these Torx bits. But don't worry, I'm going to walk you through all of it. By disconnecting the mixture control solenoid, removing the fuel vapor hose and the vacuum lines. Let's see if we can leave those alone. We're also going to pull the pin on our throttle linkage to the accelerator pump. Move that out of the way. Next, we'll take a flathead screwdriver. Take the screw out of the choke linkage. Don't lose it. Remove this piece as well. While we're here, we're going to go around the back and remove the hose that connects the choke tube. Take our air cleaner gasket with us. Now we'll take a Torx bit, start removing these bolts that hold the actual air horn to the carburetor body. Just keep in mind there are also two inside here. Be very careful not to drop them down in your intake. Also note, the two in the back are much longer than the other ones, so make sure you put those back in the right place where they belong. Now we'll remove the two Torx bits inside the carburetor. There's one on each side. You can't really see it because the choke's in the way. There you go. Guys, just be very careful when you take these out. Either magnetize whatever you're using or use pliers, but let me tell you, it's not fun having to remove the entire carburetor just to fish one of these out of your intake manifold. So be very careful. Trust me, I say this from experience. Now that we've got all those Torx bits out, but while we still have our Torx bit set out, we're going to remove the bolts or the Torx bits holding the secondary vacuum brake, the air horn. This way we can slide all that out of the way in a minute. Flip this up. Work that out. All right, now that we've got that secondary vacuum brake out of the way, we're going to use a 13mm socket. Remove our two front carburetor mounting bolts. Careful not to lose the washer underneath. And number two. Okay, the next step is to remove the secondary metering rod hangers, which are located around the back right here. Use a very small Torx bit. While I'm here, I'm actually going to remove the stud for the air cleaner. Yeah, there. If you don't have a small Torx bit, which I don't have, pliers, just very carefully grip the top. It shouldn't be torqued on tight. It's a very small screw. Once you get it out, put it aside, don't lose it. Secondary metering rods are just going to lift right out. All right, I think I just lost my underhood light. Well, we're going to keep going because that's it. These tend to stick, and stick pretty good. So you might have to tap it with a hammer or do whatever you can to get it off the carburetor body. All right, a couple good whacks with that hammer. We got it loose. I'm trying to save this gasket, so hopefully it'll work with me. Let's see what we got here. It's sticking. Get out of there. There we go. Now, we'll carefully remove the gasket. Push the accelerator plunger through. Maneuver it around the choke rod. There we go. All right, now that we've got the air cleaner off and out of the way, giving you guys a pretty good look at the inside of a Quadrajet carburetor. If you have a Dualjet, you're only going to be seeing from this point forward, but everything's the same. Don't worry. We get this accelerator pump out of the way. Okay, so here's our mixture control solenoid. There's our adjustment screw. First thing we need to do is completely remove the adjustment screw. Remove this top piece, which keeps the jets inside, and then remove this plastic block. Now I'm going to be using one of the carburetor tools that I featured in one of my tool videos. I'm going to include the link up top and in the description for you guys. Now, normally when you're removing one of these, you want to count the number of, you want to bottom it out and count the number of turns that it takes to bottom it out. This way, when you put it back in, you can just reverse that process. But since we're going to be completely recalibrating it, we don't have to do that today. So we're just going to totally remove the assembly and use our recalibration tool to get everything right where we want it. Okay. If 3 separate pieces here, make sure you don't lose them. The plastic block out. Taking care to let the jets fall through the holes. Or you could just take the jets out. Either way. I'm going to take one jet out because that's the side we're going to place our calibration tool on. So the first step is to take our calibration tool, place it over the jet. If you don't have one of these, and I'll also include a link to one of my tool videos where I tell you how to get it in the description, there is a way to do it. You can use a gauge and a straw to cut a substitute for this. I can't take credit for that idea. I found that on a video by a channel called Riot, and I will include a link to his video in the description. So if you don't have one of these, he actually has a really good workaround on what you can do. But we're going to place our gauging tool firmly over the jet right here. Actually, let's get this other metering rod out of the way. We're going to take our top piece here, place it back where it would normally go. Then I'm going to reinsert the screw, line it up so the threads just start to bite. All right, now that we've got our gauging tool firmly seated on the jet, we've reinserted the entire assembly, and I got the threads to where they're just starting to bite, and then I kind of even the screw out, I guess parallel to me, perpendicular to you. So what we're going to do now is we're going to bottom out the mixture control solenoid, and we're going to count the number of turns that it takes to get this piece here to just slightly start to contact the top of our gauging tool. That's as far as we need to go. So we're at about 15 3/4 of a turn. So that's the number we need to remember. Now we're going to take the assembly back off and remove our gauging tool. All right, now that we've removed our assembly and gauging tool, we're going to reinsert our plastic block, making sure that the metering rod pokes through. We're going to put our second metering rod back where it belongs, making sure that it gets into the hole with the jet. Then we're going to place our assembly back where it belongs. We'll get our threads to where they just start to bite, get everything lined up. We're also going to make sure the metering rods are firmly held in place by this top piece here. Then we're going to place our tool back on, making sure everything's lined up. And we're going to screw it back down the number of turns that we initially counted. In my case, it's going to be 15 3/4. Make sure everything still moves freely. Good. And now we're going to place everything back where we found it, put the air horn back on, get everything hooked up, and then got a perfectly calibrated mixture control solenoid. All right, I tore the original air horn gasket, so I had to throw a new one on. Just when you're putting it back together, just make sure you work the choke rod through. And there's little perforations here in the end. You have to kind of work it around the pieces for your mixture control solenoid. So just be mindful of that when you're putting it back together. And we almost forgot our accelerator pump. Can't forget that. Work that through the hole. Making sure everything stays where it's supposed to be. Our mixture control solenoid moves freely. And now it's time to put our air horn back on. There's a small lever on the bottom here where my thumb is. You have to be mindful of that because that'll kind of flop down and get in your way. And we'll need that for our next step to calibrate our mixture control solenoid. Work the choke rod through the hole. I find it's easier to get these mounting bolts lined up first to get everything where it should be. Just make sure you don't crush anything or feel anything, any kind of major resistance, because then you're in trouble. And we've worked everything through. We have our accelerator pump, push it through the hole. Our choke rod is out. Ready to start reinserting these torque screws. Remember, 2 long ones in the back. Now, I'm not going to tighten them down yet because there is a sequence so you don't warp the air horn. Just going to get everything lined up, back in place. Don't forget the 2 that go inside. Be very careful that you don't drop anything. All right, now I'm going to tighten down these Torx nuts. There is no torque spec, but there is a sequence, and I'm going to show that on the screen now for you guys. Usually give them a couple of turns until I see the air horn starting to go down. And then I'll retighten everything over again. All right, now we'll get our carburetor bolts back down where they belong. And then retorque carburetor bolts. 12 foot-pounds. All right, now that we got those mounting bolts torqued back down, we're going to put our secondary metering rods back where they belong. Reattach our accelerator hookup, connect our choke and our secondary vacuum brake. Then we'll reattach the mixture control solenoid and the hoses, and we'll be done with this step. Reconnected the fuel vapor hose and reinserted the hot air choke where it belongs, making sure that the other end of the pipe is lined up. If you have a Chevy, Buick, or Pontiac, you don't have to worry about that because Oldsmobile is really the only division that used a hot air choke with these. Everybody else has an electric one. So make sure you reconnect that at this time. Now we'll reinsert the stud for our air cleaner. All right, guys, so that's it. We've now got a perfectly calibrated mixture control solenoid. It's not as hard or as intimidating as you thought it'd be if somebody just walks you through it step by step. I know when I first started doing this, I really had a hard time opening up that carburetor, but now it's a breeze. So remember, if you want to follow along with the series and catch part 2, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you like what you see, make sure you tap that thumbs up like button. This way, this video can get out to more people who may need help just like you do. All right, let's move on to the next step. We're going to calibrate that throttle position sensor. Okay, the throttle position sensor is located right here. I've disconnected it so you can see it a little better. And I'm going to try and get in here and show you the adjustment hole, which is located right here. We're going to use the back side of the same tool we used to adjust our mixture control solenoid. There's a very small screw in there that we can turn to change the voltage. All right, so the first thing we have to do is to actually be able to read the voltage. There are 3 ways you can do that. Here's our throttle position sensor connector. You see there are 3 wires. You can take a voltage meter and probe the black to the blue while it's hooked up to the sensor here, and that'll give you a reading. You can also attach a Thexton set from a GM computer command control jumper set. I'll attach the link for the tool video for where I feature that up top. Or you can attach a scan tool that can read OBD1 data. Today I'm going to be using that method because I think it's the easiest. So let's reattach our throttle position sensor. Get the car in the on position. All right, backing this screw out. Oh, it's hard to see. Just have a little tiny screw here. Little drop of blue Loctite on there. Get it in and get it started. Now we'll get our scan tool scanning again. All right. use here so you guys can hopefully see it. Start working this adjustment screw in, and at some point we should start to see the voltage go down. For my particular car, I'm looking for 0.41 volts plus or minus 1, but we're going to try and get it exact. You can see it's slowly starting to decrease as we get that adjustment better. Also, this tends to have a little bit of a delay if you're using the scan tool. Too much. Back it out a little bit. Give it time to update. There we are. Right at 0.41 volts where we need to be. Alright guys, we properly set our mixture control solenoid, and we've set our throttle position sensor voltage. We're halfway done. So if you're finding this series helpful, make sure you hit the subscribe button, because part 2 is going to drop soon, where I set the idle mixture screws and the idle air bleed valve, and then that'll be it. You'll have a perfectly calibrated electronic quadrajet or dual jet carburetor. So make sure you keep your eyes open for part 2 of the series. I'll see you next time.